Oops. I'm going to begin with everything. There we go. There's a beautiful story told of the Mittler Rebbe. The Mittler Rebbe is the oldest son of the Alter Rebbe, Reb Dov Ber, who became a Rebbe after him. He became the second Rebbe. When he was like 16, 17 years old, I think 17, maybe he was 19 years old. I don't know. It was still, teenage years. And he just got married young. Actually, the Talmud tells us, Shmona Esrei lechuppah. At 18, you should get married, right? Anyways, whatever. So the Mittler Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe's son, went to his father-in-law. They went to his father-in-law for a holiday, and his father-in-law noticed. Well, actually, no, it wasn't his father-in-law. In the town of Yankovich, one of the elder Chassidim, noticed on how he's a teenager, remember? And even though he's a righteous person, but he was having a satisfaction, so to speak, in his prayers, in his prayers, in his learning. And the older chassid felt like he should, somehow he needs to learn something. He was too self-aware, is the word, right? Too self-aware of how capable you are and how accomplished you are. And not because he said anything. No, then you couldn't be righteous. You couldn't be righteous. I mean, I don't know if that time he's righteous or he's a Beinoni only. I don't know. I would say maybe only a Beinoni at that time, right? Because you have to work to become righteous. So the chassid said to him, what's the big deal about the way you pray and the way you learn and your divine service? Me, he says, your father gave you your soul and your mother. Imagine they chose your soul from the loftiest of the lofty, the top of the barrel, right? What kind of thoughts your father had when he conceived you? What kind of holy thoughts he had? Whoa. And then you were raised in the holiest of holy. Your father, your mother. Oh. So that you became something? No, no. Me, on the other hand, who knows what kind of thoughts my father had when he conceived me? Who knows? But when I was raised with the goats. I played with the goats. And now when I make my livelihood, I have to go out before dawn. I deal with the non-Jewish peasants, selling them goods. And before you can go and collect the money that they owe you, you've got to go and sit down and have a drink with them, and not only with them, but then with their wives. And that's all before I go to pray. Imagine, then I go to the mikvah, and then I go pray. Imagine what kind of davening I have. You know, well, this is what I got to deal with, right? He heard this and he was like heartbroken. Came to his father after he came from the town of Yankovich, and he came to his father, I am distraught. I'm not serving God properly. I need guidance on how to properly serve God. And he told him the whole story about it. Yeah. Next time that chassid came to the Alter Rebbe, He said, "Thank you for making a chassid from my berele." Whew, that's a powerful story. Welcome to Tanya today. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad Zuchri Kadesh in Montreal, Canada, where it's a pleasure, a privilege, and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. We conclude today chapter 30. In this chapter, we're speaking about what it means humility. The Mittler Rebbe definitely showed humility, even though teenagers are not known for humility, right? They're not known for their humility. But I mean, it's a Mittler Rebbe after all. So, and what's the humility we're talking about over here? Teachings of our sages that the Alter Rebbe takes in a very literal sense, that we should be shval ruach b'fnei kol adam, that you should be literally lower than any other person. So the Beinoni, who's a very accomplished person, to be lower than even the Kal Shebekalim, the simpleton, the most unworthy individual who sits on the streets making his livelihood and his eyes gaze where they shouldn't go, right? And he's got a temperament that is hot tamale, as they say. Don't start up with this guy as he's known as. And yet the Beinoni will look at this person being greater than him. Why? Because it's his, as the sages also say, don't judge another person until you're in their place. So the Alter Rebbe in their place means that you're like them, right? And you've experienced what they've experienced. The Alter Rebbe explains it a little differently and saying because it's their place that's causing it, because they're sitting out and by the roadside, doing business, and therefore that's why their eyes go. And that's physical place, and then their spiritual places because they've got a burning fire in them, not for holiness, the opposite that's burning in them, right? They get triggered by just a little gaze that's a little slanted, right? And yet you're lower than that person. Why? How could you be lower? The Beinoni has complete mastery of themselves, as we learn, as we learn, because it's not about the accomplishment; it's about the effort. The effort that this person has to put in to overcome their nature, to overcome the obstacles of where they work and and the gazing that's so easy to engage in is a huge battle. Now the question is for the Beinoni, are you battling in the same way? Are you putting in the same kind of effort? That's the Beinoni speaking to himself. No one's saying that to anybody. The Alter Rebbe is saying it to the Beinoni that this is the tool that the Beinoni is using in order to crush the heart of stone that might be the experience of the Beinoni in this time period. We're not feeling an insensitivity towards the divine, towards holiness, towards goodness. Not that the Beinoni, of course, is mastery over thought, speech, and action, not about the behavior here of the Beinoni, because the behavior is impeccable. We're talking about the inner world of the Beinoni. And the Beinoni takes so much responsibility for their inner world and their being that they want to deal with this. And therefore, this is how they do it, by thinking themselves lesser than even the most removed person. Now, continues the Alter Rebbe and says, anyone who has not attained this standard of waging a strenuous war against their bodily desires, right, and has not measured up to the quality of the dimension that the war that the Kal Shebekalim, this simpleton, this removed individual has to deal with their evil nature, that they have a furnace in them that's so ablaze, right, and to harness that fire to put out that fire, because it's a fire that's running amok and destroying, right? In order to humble and break the evil impulse, right? So this is the effort that you need to put in, similar to the story of the Mittler Rebbe, the effort that he needs to put in. He davens beautifully. He he learns with great. But how much of an effort do I put in? This is the question. So when it comes to grace after meals to benching, for example, which is a very simple thing to just kind of rattle off. People know that, quite well, and sometimes just sing it with fervor. The singing is, how about the intent? How much intent is being in that mitzvah? Or when it comes to Torah study, how much are we really pushing ourselves when it comes to Torah study? Again, this is the Beinoni talking to himself. How much am I pushing myself in Torah study? Right? The litmus test here is not like Western culture, that if you got 100% on your exam and you didn't even have to study for it, oh, you're lauded by everybody, right? And where the guy got only 60%, but he was up all night studying, no one lauds him. Here in the service of God, it's not that way. It's about the effort, right? It's about the effort. So the question is, what kind of effort you put in, right? The kal shebekalim, the simpleton that is removed, to deal with his evil impulse, he has to put a lot of effort in to deal with it, right? And not allowing that evil impulse to completely control him. A lot of effort there. And you, though, the Beinoni, okay, you don't have that challenge, right? You don't have that challenge of the negativity to deal with, but you have the challenge when it comes to your studies. Are you putting that same effort in a positive, right? Now you might think, yeah, but this removed person, Kal Shebekalim, about him, it's about dealing with all his negativity. Me is just improving and improving and good stuff. The Beinoni, right? So the Alter Rebbe says, what's the difference between God's will, between you removing yourself from negativity and you doing good? They're both God's will, right? Equally. So don't look and say, well, I'm better than that guy because he's just working on his eyes not going, looking places it shouldn't look. And that his nature is, that he's got a temperament, right? He's hot tempered. So he's got to control that. Yeah, and he's putting a lot of effort in that. But that's all negative stuff. Me, Beinoni, well, not me, but the Beinoni, right? It's all about adding and good and more, in your prayers, more focus, and you're learning, to be, uh, you know, eking out and giving more. That's positive. Yeah, but from the perspective of God, negative and positive are both the divine will. As we were just learning a Rambam, right? Negative prohibitions, and positive mitzvahs. In the end, they're both the will of God. So don't make a distinction, right? Now he goes even further, right? They're both the commandments of God, the Holy King, and he wants both. So too with other commandments that require struggle against the evil impulse, especially when it comes to money matters, right? Of giving charity, of how much you did the Beinoni, how much you labor in your giving, in giving tzedakah. Furthermore, it's we have a a way of looking at ourselves in a generality rather than in a detailed way. So generally life is good, and I'm good, generally speaking. When you look at the details, then you could see where there's lacking, where there's lacking, where there's lacking, right? So, for example, for the most part, your 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 communication is really good. But, here and there you might stop for a pleasant gossip, discrediting another person, a slight slur to exonerate you. You're not slurring another person, God forbid, for the slur. But someone said something and he said, no, 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 no. Like the example gives over here, Reb Shimon said to his father, Rabbi Yehuda Anasi, Rabbeinu HaKadosh, the author of the Mishnah, right, concerning a problematic bill of divorce that was improperly written. So he said, well, he said to his father, well, I didn't write it. It was Yehuda the tailor that wrote it. So his father said, keep away from slander. He was exonerating himself by saying something against another person. Now, that's a slight slur because it is exonerating you. You're not doing it with the intent to put down that person, but that, it should be clear that I didn't do the wrong, someone else did the wrong. It's on the border of, right? So person, those things like that, they are the things that we might um, kind of step upon because with our heel and others being insensitive to those slight things in life, minor details, right? But the Beinoni is not going to be that way in this process of trying to seeing yourself versus others. And especially, he continues, regarding sanctifying yourself with that which is permissible. Right? How much effort do you put in holding back that which that is permissible? How much you battle with that? In other words, breakfast is permissible, but maybe are you fighting that you should be driven by your desire for breakfast, even though it's permissible to eat the kosher breakfast, and on the contrary, you need it for strength? Okay, but you're battling that it should not be taking you over. Whew. In truth, says the Alter Rebbe, that the scholar who upholds Torah and wishes to be close to God, the truth is, in the conclusion over here, says something very interesting. Now he takes it a step further. How about that simpleton who's removed is actually not really engaged in the battle? Till now, we're saying, comparing the battle between the two of them. What if that person's not engaged in the battle? Are you still less than that person? Yes. Do you need to be humbled before that person? Yes. But I'm working on myself. That person's not even working on himself. And I'm working on myself only in the positive area. Because me, the Beinoni, I mean, it's not me. You, the Beinoni. Right? Well, where are you working on? Not on your positive, doing more good. This guy has to work on the negativity. And he's not even doing it. Yet you could be Shval Ruach before that person. Why? Because your awareness that you need to serve God and to be better mandates you that even though it might be in positive things that you have to engage in to be better and not dealing with the negativity in you, but you need to, that awareness makes you more responsible than someone who's not aware and not engaged, which is the Kal Shabbakalin, this individual who's most worthless, a street corner squatter, who's remote from God, who's got a fiery furnace inside of him that, it's got this whatever that means, whatever negative qualities that means of the individual. And the fact that this person doesn't summon up the fear of God to deal with his issues. This is similar to what our sages say about Acher, Elisha ben Avua, because he knew my glory, he knew how great it was, and he still sinned. His sin is far greater than someone who doesn't know. The simpleton doesn't know how grievous the sin is when they do a sin. And that's why they sin. And that's why our sages say that deliberate sins of the illiterate, of these individuals, are regarded as inadvertent. You hear that? But for the sage, the one who knows better, inadvertent sins are considered deliberate. Bottom line is real ownership. Bottom line is like this. Let me give a metaphor for this. If a child were to make a funny comment that is kind of embarrassing to an adult, what do you say? Oh, it was a kid. If the same thing was said by an adult, that would be a faux pas. For the kid, you laugh at it because it's a kid, doesn't know better, right? Doesn't know better. So we don't call it a faux pas, right? But the adult does it. Oh, that was inexcusable. And even if the adult didn't say the same thing as the kid, but said it, in a disguised manner or whatever it was, not the same way, and inadvertently said it. Hey, inadvertent, you need to be more responsible. And that's considered deliberate. This child said something deliberate. It's considered inadvertent because it's a child. So that's a metaphor for us to appreciate the difference between the Beinoni, who is fully aware of their divine service and what they need to do and where they need to live their life. And because of that, even if it was something inadvertent, the sages say it's considered deliberate. That's how much an adult or the Beinoni needs to take responsibility. As opposed to this individual who's like a child, who is not aware, right? And therefore their deliberate sins are considered inadvertent. And that's why the Beinoni can still look at himself or herself, and all of us BIT, Beinoni in training, we can look at ourselves as less than even such a person. Because that person, they're not struggling, or they're minimally struggling. I'm really struggling to overcome and to be, to eke out even stronger in my prayers and my Torah study and everything else. And they're barely putting any effort in. Still Shval Ruach. Is that powerful or what? That is so powerful. Any questions? Put a question mark before you ask a question so I could notice it. Is feeling not worthy the same as humility? No. We all are worthy. We are all whole. We're whole, complete, and worthy. Not because we did something, because we are something. Humility is that even with that, I humble myself. Confidence isn't about knowing how great you are. Confidence should come from knowing how great is your service. If knowing how great you are, that's the self-confidence that you have, that's an ego trip. But knowing how great your service is, how much God needs your mitzvah. And from there, you have the self-confidence of a sense of value. Ah, that's healthy. And Davida, should we have the same amount of self-introspection that we have in Elul every day? Elul is going to be more. But sometimes there'll be more, even in the month of Adar, the month of joy. We are working on it ourselves, June says, in Australia, night after night, because it's nighttime over there and it's very late and she's going to sleep after this, I think. Yes, absolutely. 100%. Huh? It's tomorrow in Australia. Yeah. How do we balance the slippery slope of honest self-judgment and the extreme self-effacement? So very good. We're going to continue with this idea in chapter 31 that will give us a better understanding. Excellent. Frank, can a humble person see and feel another person's ego or arrogance? Can we achieve that a low level of spirit? So very good. It doesn't mean you're not aware that the other person has an ego. You're aware that Kalsha Bakalim is, got a, on the contrary, you understand that they have like a temperament that, you just look at them a little, you didn't say, good morning, how are you? You didn't say good morning this day when you walked into shul and by services, and that person's slighted already. And not only that, they're going in their mind, oh, no, 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 right? And you're aware of that about that person. That doesn't mean you're not at the same time humble before them. Excellent questions. Thank you. Yana, good luck in everything. All right, beautiful. Rambam is coming up. Join us, please. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad Zich and Kadeshim Metro Academy. It's a privilege.